Welcome to the Hanley Effect, a podcast by the Hanley Foundation designed to educate, change minds, and save lives. Our goal is to inspire you, showcase our innovations, and change the conversation about addiction and mental health. Join us as we unravel stories of resilience, recovery, and hope.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the next edition of the Hanley Effect. I'm John Dybin.
Happy New Year, Dr. D.
Happy New Year, Dr. Dosicle.
I am Rachel Dosicle.
It is great to be back here. Did you have a good New Year, like holidays and such?
We did. We did nothing. We did a whole lot of nothing. It was a staycation.
I'll take it. That's beautiful.
Yes. A couple years ago, we went on a cruise through Christmas and New Year's, and my kids were really put out because they felt gypped that they didn't get as many presents. I thought, so they want to stay home. Really, that's true.
So we actually went to, we took a trip and we told our kids that this, we were not going to have, that the trip was the presents and that we weren't going to have any wrapped presents. And they were all okay with it because we started talking about it months and months and months ago. So I think that's the key is you got to talk about it for a long time, get them used to it. And then it's like, what show's on TV this morning?
That's right. They loved the trip. They just were thinking, I don't have that tangible thing.
Right.
I don't have that stocking to unwrap.
Something to unwrap.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad we're back. I love being back here with you always.
Me too.
And we have got a really cool, interesting guest.
Amazing guest today.
And why don't you tell us, Dr. D, about our guest?
I am going to. First of all, you know what came in the mail? This great magazine, Recovery Revolution.
I think it's beautiful.
It is beautiful. It's so incredible. Great. And I started paging through it. I forgot how great it was. And today's guest, Chip James, on his path to recovery and service. Sir, we knew you when? We knew you before you were a superstar in our magazine. Now, hold on a second before you start to talk. There is a ground rule today. There's a ground rule. There's this thing that our board chair does. We call it a Chip James. It comes out of nowhere like a strike of lightning, and it is always something that you want to tune into and listen to. It's usually slightly funny, but always a stroke of genius. So we are going to be listening today for the moments of Chip James.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Spot me a couple of strokes today. Okay, fine.
Welcome.
Thank you. There's few people I'd rather sit with than you two guys, face off, mic to mic, table to table, across the desk.
Oh.
Thank you for having me here today.
I'm calling that a Chip James.
Yeah, me too. Yep. Face off.
We are excited about having you here. There's so much that we want to hear from you, and we've got a short time, and so we always like to start with getting to know the person and letting our audience get to know the human being. So we'd like to know, just in your own words and wherever you're comfortable, can you just tell us about who you are, what you do in your life, and anything in your journey? We love to know about people's journeys. What got you to be where you are today?
And the best board chair ever.
Best ever.
Best ever.
Here's where I'm committed to begin this conversation. Hi, my name is Chip James. Longtime listener, first-time caller. So, now that I got that out of the way.
That again was a Chip James.
I'm just on an incredible path. Kid from West Virginia who felt like he's been playing on house money for most of his adult life, career, work. I've had a big life in a lot of places over a lot of years, and found myself in a deep hole 13 and almost a half years ago. So I'm Chip James. I'm an alcoholic in recovery and delighted about it. At age 56, had blown up my life, big life, fled to Florida from New York, fled from Florida to a rehab center in California. And I awoke in a treatment center feeling great. And I have stayed on that path since that week, since that day, August 3rd, 2011.
Wow.
Amazing.
So it's, I'm a guy who's had his life in I gauged my life by where I lived at the time. I've lived a bunch of places, done a bunch of things. I've been on a very good run since 2011, immersed in the program of recovery. And that is what fuels my days, gives me pleasure, gives me peace, gives me purpose, absolutely number one. And, I just sort of get up and do it again. As a result of that, and I hear people in recovery talking about finding themselves, especially young people, I'm a guy who says, as a retort, I got to make myself. I got sober, got clear-headed, got to figure out what I was going to do, played golf for a year, got bored, like every good Floridian. I think they require this. Went down to a class to get a real estate license, and I'm driving by an airport. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Wait a minute. I'm going to go learn to fly. I didn't find myself as a pilot, but I went into that airport, started taking flying lessons where we first ran across each other, not knowing. And I realized with a clear head and the ability to do things that I had not had the ability to do for a while, I taught myself to fly an airplane. No, I was taught to fly an airplane. But
that was a Chip James.
This is not a YouTube experience I recommend.
Yes.
Hire a professional. And so I'm a guy now who's a pilot and has a plane and is able to take myself places and do things that I had never thought I could do before. And live a life in recovery doing some great things. So I'm a very happy man is who I am at my core.
Well, I love that.
You are our board chair. You are Hanley Foundation's board chair. But the story I like best is the one when you just joined the board. This is the type of individual Chip James is. Talk about that. Tell us the story.
I was very gratified when, I had a pretty active life in service in the first 5 or 6 years of my recovery. I had a good financial position and a good steady lifestyle, and so I was active at the meeting level. People asked me to be treasurer of their meetings, and I did that. And then I got active at the club level, where I was the treasurer of a nonprofit club that hosts 12-step meetings, and then I got joined the board of that organization, and so I expanded my levels of service, not really in a plan, but as opportunities present themselves. I had learned to say yes when asked to do something in recovery. Mm-hmm. And so I was honored when Hanley started talking to me a little bit about it. And I said, guys, I don't have a clue what you do. They said, don't worry. So this very unique sort of
a bait and switch, you realize.
This very unique process. They said, all right, our meeting starts at 9 o'clock. Come at 9:15. We're going to let you know what color the smoke is, right? Dark smoke, light smoke. Apparently it was light smoke. They invited me in. I sat there for 3 hours or 4 hours and walked out of there, man. I have no idea what's going on. No idea what these people do, how it matters, what happens, how it works. So I called Rachel a day or two later and said, hey, I'm now that I'm on the board, I want a new board member orientation. So can I come in? You guys give me the orientation. Absolutely, Mr. James. We're glad to have to do it. Come in at 11:30 and we'll do a board orientation. And I got in there and they gave me bait and switch. They gave me a salad and we started talking. They said,
it had good dressing.
When they feed you first, you know something's coming.
It's bad.
Right.
It's bad.
It's
bad.
Yeah, I lose. So they said, 37 years we've had a board. No one has ever asked us for a board member orientation. Guess what? We don't have one. Okay. And they then said, why don't you be our guinea pig? You know nothing. You need to know everything. And so
Makes
I
perfect
said,
sense.
okay. So Dr. Dosico and I sat down and started looking at Hanley, everything, and put it on paper. And I had the opportunity to dig through the records and the ideas and to put on paper everything that was going on with the Hanley Foundation and created a board binder that we are quite proud of and continue to use. And so I just jumped in and did what I could do and learned what I could learn. And that's so good, and it was such a mistake. Because the next question was, great, why did you become chair of the governance committee? A couple of years later, why don't you become our chairperson? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, chairman for life.
There's an advantage to doing things poorly. In that, you're not going to find yourself
weaponized incompetence.
Weaponized
is that what you're talking about? Weaponized incompetence.
I just don't think that is your way of. I don't think that would fit for you.
No.
The way my mind works, I've figured this out now. That the way my mind works, I like to know how things process. I'm concerned about process because I want all that to go smoothly. Like if process works, ideas can follow. Right. And so, I keep stepping back and looking at the process. And I've got a great partnership with our CEO, with Rachel, because our minds work a little differently in totally complementary ways. And so it's helpful for me to think the way I think, to try and make sure the parts fit together. And then I get to go lay down and take a nap, and she's got to go back to work. It's a brilliant relationship for a 70-year-old man.
So let me tell my Chip James
You tell
story.
your Chip James.
So,
do I need to leave?
Well, maybe. No. So
we'll keep it between us. We'll keep it in here.
Okay, perfect. Pinky swear?
Pinky swear.
Okay. In 2023, in March 2023, our COO, Jen Lee, got a call. We think that maybe TRT is thinking about selling Origin. So Hanley Center, the treatment center, had become a for-profit in 2014, end of 2014, and the name was Origins Behavioral Health Care. So I say to Chip James, literally at about 4:30 in the afternoon, after we had gotten this information, made some calls, Chip, will you go to Dallas with us tomorrow? What do you think his answer was? Heck yeah. So the next day, Chip, Jen Lee, Turner, and I were on our way to Dallas. Had an opportunity to speak with Jim Caldwell, TRT, who is amazing. The rest is history. That is what our board chair does. And then we came back, got the call that, if we were interested, we could acquire Hanley, and, the rest is history. We sprinted. There was no napping in 2023 for anybody.
Good point. Talk about bait and switch.
Yeah, that's right.
Take on this foundation, and guess what? You're just not going to sleep for the next year or so.
That's right. So let me tell you what I like best about Chip James. I like the fact that he, in the morning, will help lead a board retreat, which we did this week. We had a full board retreat. I think everybody but one member was there, and the contributions by our board members were, we probably could have gone for double the time. And then when we were done, Chip said, I got to go because I'm taking somebody through a first step. And off he goes, and he goes dark for a couple hours. That is service. And that's what this article in here about you really talks about. The fact that you are all about service. And, I know that later today you're going to say, Rachel, why did you talk about that? Because for you, service, it doesn't count if you talk about it. It's something that you just do. So at the end of this show, we have to talk about anybody who wants a copy of our latest magazine. Right. We'll let you know how you can email us, and we'll get one for you.
It's super cool how you did the 2-in-1. I mean, I'm just saying.
I would like to just do a shout out to our marketing department.
Pretty impressive.
It's like 2 magazines in one. Yeah. It's cool.
So the way that, and Chip, you started to refer to this a little while ago. So when I was, first coming to know everybody and know your board, and I met Chip, I said, man, and this is just a couple, less than 2 years ago. I said, God, I know that guy. He looks so familiar. And I couldn't remember. And then finally I'm driving by that same airport that Chip was talking about driving by, and I had a memory. Well, at the same time that Chip was, he was a little more further advanced, and now he's way more advanced as a pilot.
You watched more YouTube videos than you did.
Oh, he's seen way more movies. But there was a time where we were actually training at the same place, and we were training in the same airplane, which was the ugliest airplane on that airport.
Chitty chitty bang
It
bang.
it is a 7.5 Romeo is the airplane, and I was set to rent it, and it was a little bit late, and I went out to the tarmac when it came out, and this guy popped out and he handed me the keys and stuff, and it had been a decade or more, but you don't forget.
No,
when you meet
don't forget.
Chip James, you don't forget. But I was thinking, Chip, about your own story, and I was thinking about pilot training. And I remember, a lot of people will talk about, and I certainly had this experience, somewhere in the middle towards the second half. There were moments one moment in particular, where I remember being like, my instructor was really trying to get me ready for that final test where they mess with your head and he's, dropping things in the airplane and telling me to do 9 different things. And I remember a moment of having a feeling like, I can't do this. There was a moment where I felt defeated, like I wasn't going to be able to make it. And I wonder if you ever experienced that. And when I hear your story, I had happiness, and I woke up in this treatment center, and my life was changed. And I wonder if there have ever been, like, in that time from then to there, are there those times? Do you have those moments too? Are you just an always positive person, or have you had those moments where you're like, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to make it.
One of the things we learn in recovery is awareness of fear and exploration of fear. It's one of the 4 pages in a common worksheet on the 4-step of AA. And sometimes fear creeps in, and that's a difficult challenge. Mm-hmm. Other times fear hits you in the forehead. Right. And that's your experience. Mm. And of course, I've had that where my heart skips a beat, especially flying an airplane. And I'm much more fearful when there are 2 or 3 people around. I'm most afraid of being in an airplane with my flight instructor. I am less afraid when I'm with a check pilot doing an FAA check ride. And when I'm up there by myself and with my dog, I'm happy as a clam because I know, without any other way, I can be just fine. But in life, it sometimes creeps in, and I've learned to recognize it. And the biggest lesson I have about fear is that fear is always bigger than fact. I'll find myself not wanting to do something, and so I won't do it. And whatever that fear is, it keeps growing while the task behind that is essentially the same. And 100% of the time, when I finally bust through the wall, do what I was afraid of doing, the facts are always smaller than the fear. And so I've learned. One of my big words in recovery is I need analogies to understand it, but I need to extrapolate the lessons of flying, for example, to the lessons of life, and versa versa. And so, I get to figure out how to do things better from experiences in, one element of my life to the other elements of my life. So, the good news is I've learned to recognize these things now and deal with them earlier instead of just keep, not doing it. I want to clean up my messes as soon as I make them.
I love that.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm always thinking about who's listening, right? And though it is just the 3 of us, right? A lot of people listen to this and hear this. And that's a powerful message for someone who is, it just prompted me. I'm thinking of something in my own life that, I'm kind of putting it off, and I've made it bigger in my head, and I need to just do this little, and it's a little thing, but I think that it's so, sometimes when they hear stories of, my life is changed, and there's so much good happening. There's such a power in hearing that it's not magic. right? And how I overcome the barriers and the things that get in the way, like fear. I really appreciate that.
The other thing, my final important point about fear is I used to lay in bed, back in my drinking career, I used to lay in bed and wake up and worry about stuff. Worry, and trying to plan how to manage and move all these parts. And only through this process of self-discovery and self-honesty that I've undertaken have I learned that worry was all just fear. It was all fear. It wasn't planning. It wasn't worrying. It was just like reacting to fear. And I really just have to do the next thing right as these things come into my life. And if I do that consistently, less things come into my life for me to have to deal with or be afraid of.
Yeah. And the piece I love is that you bring this type of leadership, what I'll call thoughtful leadership, to the board, but really to senior staff. So our senior staff know you and our executive committee well. What a gift that as we are running this business, and Hanley is a business, right? It is a delicious, incredible nonprofit that is changing behavioral health, but at its core, it's a business. And the culture of leadership, the philosophy of leadership, goes right to this core and has this type of thoughtful guide. And I can't tell you how grateful we are for it.
Yeah, go ahead and tell me.
We are so grateful.
That's enough.
Was that a Chip James?
I think it was.
I mean, the timing was so right.
It was so right. It's so right. There's sometimes you miss them. They zing right past you. And then later on in the day, you're like, wait a minute. That was a Chip James.
So you experientially, you're a person who has seen the devastation of addiction in our country and our world, and the incredible gift of recovery at every level.
Yes.
I mean, you've got the bird's eye view, you get the man on the ground view at every level. We recently, there was a report that came out from 2003, and it was, saying that we had a decrease in overdose deaths in Florida, and it's a great thing. And we're still talking about over 100,000 people a year dying in our country from overdose and addiction. And I wonder if you'd be willing to talk about just thinking about, from your perspective, all these perspectives that you have. Where do you see us? Where do you see recovery, treatment moving in the next years if you had your magic wand?
Mm-hmm.
The value of my path is that I started as a man at 56 in my own personal recovery. So I had to rethink, recalibrate, reconsider, reform an entire value system that I had spent decades building. Mm-hmm. I'd spent decades really chasing the almighty dollar. I mean, that was my motivational behavior, and doing whatever I could to achieve that. My relationships, certainly in business and in many personal, were based on how I could get what I wanted from other people. And then in recovery, I'm trying to save myself and save my life and experience recovery on a one-on-one basis with other people for 60 minutes at a time, and 15 minutes before and 15 minutes after. And as I was lifted up into bigger obligations and engagement, like I said, at the meeting level, at the club level, I began to see the breadth of recovery. Mm-hmm. And on those levels, it was in a meeting, interviewing a new board person, that the thought came to me that I had built this inverse triangle of service, working with an individual one-on-one, working at the meeting level, working at the club level, working at the Hanley level. Every level was wider, bigger. The footprint and effects were more far-reaching. So what I see happening is a massive destigmatization of recovery. I mean, I sent Rachel a couple of articles just the last couple of days. I'm telling people all month, hey, I'm doing dry January. My 13th in a row. and now people talk about,
Chip James.
That's the Chip James.
Sobriety and not drinking and sober curious. So we have such easier, greater opportunity to maximize our efforts to a bigger audience. Almost no one I talk to is more than 1 or 2 degrees away from substance use disorder.
Yeah.
Personally, one family member, somebody that they know's family member. No one's that far away.
Yeah.
And so it's about us at Hanley doing things that we discover work so well to more people, and then we're going to extrapolate it out. We're going to export it out to all the other places and peoples and processes and programs that can benefit from your type of research, your type of management of our efforts.
I love that.
So in my mind, service, it's the secret sauce. It's the Tinkerbell dust. It's the magic wand. Talk about service and what it means to you at your core.
I think about service the last couple of days because I know you wanted to talk about it. So it's occurred to me that my perspective on service has changed over the course of my recovery, at this phase of my development. It's one of the great conundrums in recovery that, I was so selfish, self-centered, and self-seeking. I mean, I took this 186 character defects listed on Google at the time, and I only had 182 of them. But as I worked through them, it all really boiled down to selfishness. So the conundrum is, in order for me to get the benefits of recovery, I have to stop thinking about me. And if I stop thinking about me and stop acting with me as a center, I benefit. So it's crazy, but it's cool. And my service has taken the forms that I've talked about at all these organizational levels. But I'm delighted to say when I get in any sort of a negative, drifting off the path, I find a service opportunity in front of me. And it's really just to simply think about others. And I've learned time and time again how much better I feel if I think about other people. And in the programs of recovery, in the meetings of all these 12-step programs, there's always an opportunity for service for every person. And what that is to go introduce yourself to another person and make them feel welcome.
Yeah.
Yep. So you lead research at Hanley Foundation, and you just launched a brand new longitudinal study. It's going to take a while, but I am really interested at the end of that to see whether or not service and the pursuit of service is positively correlated with somebody staying sober. I can almost guarantee it will be.
And we see it, right? We've just been at Hanley for 20 years, and as a therapist and as a clinician, as a chaplain, it most certainly you hear the stories again and again and again. But if we're going to really do what we can to destigmatize on a national level, we've got to be able to say more than just, hey, I've had, 1,000 different people that have said that service was what, so important. We've got to be able to show, a scientific data that we've done this work. And I'm personally pretty convinced that we're going to see that positive correlation. But, it is, I think that your answer of, really kind of destroying stigma, like that is, it is so critical, and all the research, not just knowing what we know just from experience, but the research, so much research that says if we're going to change these 100,000 plus people dying every year, if we're going to change the devastation of addiction, we've got to change our culture of stigma. And so I think that's so important. And I really, just back to what you were saying before, because I really love this. The two messages that I heard from you they can sound opposite, but they're actually totally aligned. Mm-hmm. And one is when I am too focused on myself, when I'm not doing well, focus on someone else and help someone else, and that will move clear my mind in a healthy direction. But it's about intending to do something. It's not about denying problems that exist. And that idea of, because you said two things. One is face fear. Pay attention when you're feeling it, pay attention to your feelings. And when you're stuck in them, help someone else.
That's right.
And I love that balance.
And what you said, which is I think the important part, is that when you're feeling that way, that you are presented with an opportunity to help somebody else. I think that's universal.
I agree.
I think we would find, each one of us is presented with that opportunity.
Right.
The question is, do we take it? Do we take that opportunity, or do we just fold back in and think about ourselves and really focus on the negative, focus on the fear?
Yeah, I learned about AA when I was an undergrad psychology student, and we had to actually go to some open meetings, and we had to get a big book.
This is the nerd part of our show.
Yes, sorry. But the reality is that it was so I had this big book, and there was a time in my life where, without a drink or a drug in my body ever, I had some pretty great failures. And I ended up pulling out this book because I couldn't find any other thing to read. And I started reading, and I as a person who had never been addicted to a chemical, I'm going, oh my gosh, I get this. There's a story about this actor, and I'm like, oh man. And the principles of the 12 steps, I'm absolutely convinced every human being could use them.
Yeah.
So I'll stop with my nerdness now, because we are coming to our wrap-up time.
We are.
I can't believe it. It goes so fast.
It goes so fast.
Chip, we always like to, as we wrap up, we'd like to hand it over to you. And we like you to think about the people that are listening, the people that will listen to this and hear this. And I'd love you to just have a moment to say, thinking about people that are listening to this, which are both professionals and non-professionals, people who've never had a drink in their life, people who are struggling with addiction or maybe even struggling with their own recovery. What do you want people to hear? What message would you give from Chip James?
I think my message would be, do the hard thing. The hardest thing for me to do, I had two hard parts in my recovery. The hardest thing for me to do was to humble myself enough to ask another man for help. And the second hardest thing I had to do was to sit down and do the writing of the work. So what I've learned is that help is available. And I would ask people to consider to do the hard thing, do that which they're most uninclined to do. Make the call, ask the question, try and get some help, and it is available. It's available in a lot of places, in a lot of ways, and if you get through the hard part, what do you got left? The easy part.
Yeah, I love that.
I love that. Thank you, Chip.
If you would like to read Chip's story in our Recovery Revolution magazine, send an email with your name and mailing address to marketing@hanleyfoundation.org. We'll get one of these sent right out to you.
Fantastic.
That's it.
Dr. Dosical, thank you for being here today. I loved this.
Dr. Diven, it's always a pleasure.
Always. And thank you to everybody who's listening, watching. We wish you the best, and we will see you next time on The Hanley Effect.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining us for The Hanley Effect. To learn more about our programs, visit hanleyfoundation.org or call 844-502-4673.